and this is Radio Vision. My name is Vernon White, and I'm here in the studio with Sharonne Salaam, Bob Lederer, and Lynne Stewart, and we're talking about the upcoming election at WBAI Radio. Very important election because things are so dire that if there is no change, the history of its direness says that it's just going to get more dire, because you got the same people who will be running the station. So, this is an attempt to try and sensitize people to what's going on, so that there can be some change brought about. And Bob, you were talking about some of those measurable results and what has happened over the past 6 years.
Right. Well, so in the time that this group, now calling itself the Indie Caucus, has controlled the board at WBAI, in addition to this drastic drop in listenership and paid membership and a resulting huge increase in the number of days that producers have to go on the air and beg people to make donations, the most devastating blow we faced was 2 years ago when the national management of the Pacifica Network imposed a 3/4 cut of all paid staff. So in other words, we went down from about 24 staff to about 9, or 28, I believe it was, down to 9, which meant all of the on-air hosts and the entire news department were let go, and as well as some engineers and others and some administrative people. And this has just taken a tremendous toll of, first and most obviously, on programming. You had some of the best programmers, Hugh Hamilton, for instance, who did the afternoon 2-hour show called Talkback, very erudite and highly intellectual presentation of the issues of the day with some of the top experts. He's gone. I could go down a long list, but the point is that this was a huge blow, and what they had to bring in as an alternative was canned programming from other parts of Pacifica, some of which may be very good quality and cover interesting topics, but they're not local programs that reflect the New York, New Jersey, Connecticut community, which is the main purpose of this station existing. Not that we don't have important national programming, but the most valuable thing, especially during drive time, is to have the local reports on what's going on and local voices of change. So a lot of that was lost. Now, fortunately, we had a very brief period last year where an excellent interim program director was brought in by the name of Mario Murillo, who had a long track record at the station and who you worked with before you were summarily and unfairly fired as program director in 2009. And he was able to revitalize some of those voices by recruiting through his channels and connections people to come on the air for no money and host some shows at the morning drive time and the afternoon drive time. And very diverse voices, including some more younger people, which we very much needed. So that's begun to turn around a little bit, but there's still a lot of gaps in the schedule, a lot of voices that are not on the air that need to be. And we've lost a lot of listeners who became so disillusioned when their favorite voices were gone, and the fact that there's no longer an evening newscast, that they left us and have not returned. So we have to look at new leadership of the board and moving the station in a really different
Time
direction.
for a change.
Yeah.
Yes.
Coin a
Time
phrase.
for a change. Not coin a phrase, but to say what's real. That's what's real.
Yeah, need some fresh blood
Yes.
sitting at the table, fresh ideas, so that we can move certain things forward and get some other things done. Because the reality is, when people out there are in trouble and they're looking for stuff and they want information, they don't know where to go, somehow they find WBAI and they look for places like that so that they can get this information. And we need to make sure that it constantly is available to us. We don't want to turn on WBAI and hear music all day. We want valid information of what's happening in the world around us. people sharing ideas that we may use or we may choose not to use, but at least it's there for us. This is what we're all about here at WBAI and what it has always been about. And we want to keep it that way. And for us to keep it that way, we're going to need you all to make sure you go out and vote. Make sure you vote, and when you vote, you write down Lynne Stewart's name and mark that number 1. You do Bob Lederer's name and
Well,
all
actually,
the...
I'm not on the
Oh,
ballot.
you're not
for the
on the
listeners.
ballot for the
We have a
listeners?
separate
So the
election for
staff.
staff
Oh,
that only
you see
staff
what I'm
people
saying?
can vote for.
Only staff people can vote for him. So don't worry about him. We have our own information out there, and we have
But
a
John
group
Brinkley
of
is
people.
also on it, and,
Yes,
and
John.
Ralph Pointer, my partner for many years, who's
Yes.
been an activist in this city
Yes.
for 50 years.
That's right.
There is everyone on that ballot has been vetted and
Mm-hmm.
brings something to BAI that hasn't been there in a while.
That's right. So, and if you don't know all the names of those people with justice and unity, Bob, give that address that they could look it up on the
Absolutely.
internet.
It's www.justiceunity.org. Justiceunity.org. And let me mention a couple of other of the fantastic listener candidates that we
Yeah.
have running. We have King Downing, who is a longtime attorney, has specialized on the issue of police brutality and accountability for police. He went out to Ferguson last year at the height of the movement and lent his legal expertise and his activist organizing skills.
Yes, I met King first when we both attended Ward Churchill's trial out in Denver, Colorado. You know, Ward is the expert on the Panthers, the expert on the Native American situation, and of course was COINTELPRO, right, and was summarily fired, although they claimed that it was because of a problem with the integrity of his work, but actually all know he wrote a poem that they didn't like, in which he very, very accurately described the people who died at the World Trade Center. While we have sympathy and we care about this, but he accurately said, but these were all working within the corporate framework, and they were not people that were someone that was out there doing good all day. So anyway, the University of Colorado went bananas and fired him, and that's where I met King Downing, who is now a candidate along with me for the board.
Right. Now, isn't that free speech?
Yeah, well, he went to trial, he won. He had a jury of all young folks out there, thanks to the Obama election, which, if it did nothing else, it did organize a lot of young people to be on the voter rolls so they could serve on juries.
Yeah.
So the jury voted with him. The judge decided, oh no, we're not going to go against the powers that be. And see, that's the kind of story WBAI should be carrying. And it's from beginning to end. The trial was a marvel. I mean, he had witnesses and people, and it was just an amazing trial. And one of the last times that Russell Means was around and available and could have been interviewed too. But at any rate, King Downing is also on our ballot. Go ahead and
Well, as
detail others.
our Dacio Quintana, who's a Puerto Rican independence activist and someone who has a long history in the labor movement. He was a retired teacher, worked a lot with the teachers union. We have Pauline Park, who is an Asian American transgender woman who's been extremely active in the transgender rights movement and the broader LGBT movement, and has focused a lot of her work on the portion of the LGBT movement that's in solidarity with the Palestinians and opposed to Israeli apartheid. We have Eugene Hammond, who is a longtime volunteer at WBAI, who also sings in the New York Labor Chorus and is a
He was on
volunteer.
the Community Bulletin Board.
That's
too.
right. He was on the
For many
WBAI
years.
Community Bulletin Board before it got
And
censored.
that's another casualty of,
Right.
of the last 6 years.
Well, it still exists, but
Yeah.
the crew who was there all quit in protest of the group that was the person installed in management with the support of the Indy Caucus board majority decided to censor them because they had the temerity to mention an event where you, Bernard White, were going to be speaking. So they all resigned rather than allow their work to be censored. But anyway, he is also active with the IFCO Pastors for Peace. So what you see here is a group of people who are highly accomplished, very skilled, can bring a lot of knowledge about how nonprofit organizations can succeed, how you manage conflict, how you deal respectfully with other points of view, and all the while keeping the values clear, what the station needs to be about.
You know, and I think that really describes the divide. That you have the activists on one end who see this station as a way of amplifying the voices of folks who don't get an opportunity to tell their story. On the other side, you have the corporate types who are looking to compete with the BLS, and because I remember many times that they would come to me and say that, you know, our numbers aren't the equivalent of a BLS or of a corporate radio station. First of all, if we had folks that just all flocked to WBAI, it would mean that BAI is now like those other folks. This station has a specific purpose. It's not there to make a whole lot of money, but it is there to be able to inform a whole lot of people. And I think that, you know, Samori Marksman, when he was program director, was one of the people who recognized that. And at the same time, he was able, it happened at a time when there were people dedicated to getting information out. I remember when something would jump off, nobody had to call. We would all just wind up coming to the station to make sure that we could you know, we'd start calling guests on the way to the station, just to make sure that stuff happened. That doesn't happen anymore, and the folks who are now there don't understand that dynamic. And what they did was they chased out many of the activists and began to just replace them with voices. And I think the listeners felt that. They might not have understood everything that was going on, but they felt that this was no longer as dynamic as it once was. And
that's the word,
that's
I think.
true.
The dynamic is gone. It's just another talking heads show, and people really do not find it on their dial. We have it on the dial on every car that we've ever owned, but I can tell you that we don't go there very often, except for certain special things that we listen to Amy, we listen to other things. We listen to, of course, Mimi in the morning. But that 6 o'clock news, I can't tell you how much I miss that, because that was possible always to go to that, call up the newsroom and say, look, we're up in the court in the Bronx and the jury is going out on Larry Davis, so we want to make sure people know that and are coming to the courtroom. We want to fill this courtroom, so every time that jury comes back in, and sure enough, on the 6 o'clock news, they would cover the fact that the jury, or, you know, I mean, it was just possible to do that kind of thing.
That's
now,
how it
who do you
was.
call? Where do you go? You can't. There's no line anymore, and no dynamism. I think your word is very well.
Yeah, we must keep this station alive.
Alive.
WBAI needs everything that you could give it, and it needs all these people who are on the Justice and Unity
We are
list
the
of voters.
transfusion.
Yes, we
I
need
hope.
to be there.
Yes, we're
Make
not.
sure you vote. Write in Lynne Stewart, #1, and look at our list. Repeat that website. Yes.
www.justiceunity.org.
Okay.
you were going to say something a minute ago? You remember that?
Oh, well, I just wanted to make sure viewers who don't know who Amy and Mimi are, that Amy Goodman, who many of you may have heard of because the program that Pacifica started actually with her in 1996 called Democracy Now!, and then she spun it off into an independent production, is still aired on our airwaves every weekday morning from 8 to 9 a.m. It's an excellent news magazine and breaking news and investigative news that really kind of gives you the summary of a lot of what's going on in the world from a progressive perspective. And Mimi Rosenberg is the co-producer with Ken Nash of an outstanding program called Building Bridges, Your Community and Labor Report, which does a lot of coverage of the labor movement, of union struggles, but also of grassroots community struggles, particularly against racism, and particularly on the issues of police brutality and discrimination. And that airs every Monday from 7 to 8 p.m. So those are two stellar programs I recommend everyone tune into.
And to be a little more arcane, it won't be Sunday morning unless I listen to the wonderful musical programs that are not hip hop, but are two elderly, I don't know who they are, I've never met them at any of the BAI functions, but two what seem to be elderly gentlemen from 8 to 9 in the morning, and then from 9 to 11, who play the most magnificent medieval music, medieval and Baroque, and it is better than going to church, although I shouldn't say that, but it's wonderful.
Amen.
But and there it is on BAI. You say, it reaches more than just, the politicos. It reaches everybody on
Right.
a level, and
Right.
that's how it should be.
Right.
Yes, it really should.
And actually, I can also say Bill Harewigan, who used to be on in the middle of the night, but his
Playing
jazz
music,
show
yeah.
was really quite wonderful also.
And he's now a board member with Justice and Unity. He's done really hard work on the board.
Yeah, he exercised his freedom of speech, and they gave him his walking stick.
Right. No, that's happened a lot under the Indy Caucus kind of control.
Sharonne, you were saying about ideas and that we need new ideas. I think a lot of the ideas that are already there are good. It's just that they've been blocked.
Right.
They've been blocked by this indie group,
Right.
formerly known as ACE.
Yes. This is why it's so important that when you get those ballots, you write in Lynne Stewart,
Yep, yep.
number 1, and you go down the list. Bob, repeat that.
One more time, Bob, for the West Coast.
JusticeUnity.org.
Okay. We hear a lot about the transmitter, and once the transmitter goes, you can transmit.
That's right.
What's the status of that?
Well, this is one of the most serious threats to the survival of the station. Up until about a year and a half ago, the rent kept going up every year, and it was at the level of $55,000 a month. Just an exorbitant, unheard of amount that is not matched even remotely by any of the 4 sister stations around Pacifica, which is part of what we keep trying to explain to our colleagues, that we in New York have unprecedented expenses that no other Pacifica station has to bear. There's been a lot of negotiation by the current management with the WBAI management, with the Empire State Building management, to try to lower that. And for the time being, there's a lower rent being accepted, but we still don't know whether they're going to hold us responsible for the difference between what's in the lease and what we're currently paying, which is substantial. So that's the threat to our existence, is if the Empire State Building calls in that debt. So we have Justice and Unity was a strong advocate for lowering our rental costs for the studios. The Indy Caucus majority on the board in 2012 ridiculed and voted down your motion. Actually, Bernard is on the board too, and he brought a motion saying the studios we used to have at Wall Street, which cost $37,000 a month, were just an unacceptably high expense that we could get for cheaper amounts in other neighborhoods, and also by having a little bit less space. And they ridiculed that. They said that's absurd. It would cost $1 million to move out of here. And lo and behold, 4 months after that motion was laughingly voted down, Hurricane Sandy hit. The building on Wall Street that the station was housed in was flooded at the bottom 2 floors, and it knocked out our phones, and actually all the tenants were excluded for more than a month. The bottom line being, within 3 months after that, the station had no choice but to move. And suddenly, lo and behold, oh, well, we could move into a cheaper place that had smaller facilities, and we, Justice and Unity, made the connection at City College that allowed the station to move to affordable, actually it was a quarter of the rent that had been paid at Wall Street. And that sustained us for 2 years until finally last year, the station was able to consolidate in one, its administrative offices, which were separate, are now together with the studio in downtown Brooklyn. But that's an example of the constructive role that we played. And when we were almost evicted from the Empire State Transmitter, or from being allowed to have the transmitter 2 years ago, we were the ones that brought a motion which we shamed the majority into passing, to set up a special transmitter fund and to go on the air and share with listeners what had been withheld by this majority, which is that we were facing eviction in court, and that our listeners would rally behind us and raise money, and indeed they did, and we didn't get evicted, but only because of our intervention. And this is typical of how things have gone over the last 6 years when Indie Caucus has been in control.
Yeah, I think there has to be some understanding that BAI exists with a very delicate balance, and that if it's going to survive, you have to bring in all of the various pieces. We have a rich community, rich neighborhood of all kinds of folks here with all kinds of experiences and all kinds of needs. And I think that when we were, because Grandpa Al Lewis used to always say that we reflected the demographic of New York City more than any other institution. And you got to remember, around that time, we were having $1 million fundraisers. I remember Amy and I in the morning, and Democracy Now! Is just a spin-off of Wake Up Call.
Wake Up Call being the show that Bernard used to co-host.
Hosted, yes.
Yeah.
But I mean, but it also shows you just what you can do in an unfettered environment with dedicated people and resources.
That's right. That's
but
right.
you know, it was during that period that we had tremendous fund drives, and we were inching back toward that. I mean, Anthony Riddle tried to point out that things were getting better. That all of the institutions at that time, the New York Times was crying about their subscriber base had gone down. All the institutions were. Folks were selling off radio stations because their revenue was gone down. And they chose that time to make a move on BAI. But it is it's very important. It's a very important station. And for those of you who have been listening for a long time, those of you who were once a part, hopefully we're talking to some people who make up the electorate, folks who are eligible to vote, and that you recognize that change can come about. Folks came in saying that they were going to straighten out the problems with the premiums. And even though there are less premiums, less subscribers, the premium situation has changed very little. And
I believe in the debate the other day that was broadcast on BAI, someone from the Indie said something like, well, it used to be we hadn't sent out over 8,000. We've gotten that down to 6,000, as if this is some kind of a tremendous victory because they've reduced the number. But what are we talking about here? I mean, if anything would be discouraging to a would-be donor, it seems to me. I don't think anybody's waiting by their mailbox to get their book or their VC. Did I say VCR?
Yes,
oh
you
my
did.
God! Forgive me.
DVD.
DVD.
Well, don't worry, it'll be back.
It'll be. You think so? I don't know.
Definitely,
Records are
everything's
coming
vinyl
back.
is coming.
Vinyl came back. Yes,
Yes.
indeed.
Don't
But
throw
I'm
out
saying I don't think
anything.
anybody's waiting at the mailbox. But even so, at a certain point, you do say, "Hey, you know, I was supposed to get that." that interview with
Yeah.
let's think of someone good,
Noam
Gary
Chomsky.
Palast or Noam Chomsky, and whatever happened to that?
Yeah.
And then you say, well, who do I call? What do I do? How do I find out what the status is? No way to find out, nothing. So I think that, I know that for Ralph, that's one of his chief hobby horses. He hates that fact that the premiums are not the people who go to the trouble to pledge and want to get these things and use them in their work, their political work. It's a double whammy because it makes them mad at BAI and it also inhibits the work. So it's a very important thing.
Yeah.
This is why, when you get those ballots, you need to do, first thing, write Lynne Stewart, number 1. And if you don't know who all the others who are with Justice and Unity are, check out our website, and they will list them there. Some have been mentioned on this program. And Bob is going to give you the
website. One more time. One more time, Bob.
JusticeUnity.org.
JusticeandUnity.org.
No,
JusticeUnity.org.
And for those-
We've all learned to be as stupid as the computers are.
That's right.
You have to be.
That's right. I'm
it
not
has to
really
be
a
the
computer
exact
person.
name.
That's why we have Bob here who knows this stuff.
Knows what's
And
going
for
on.
those who
And
want to
Bernard
call,
too.
for those who want to call, our number, our voicemail is 212-591-2111.
What's that number again?
212-591-2111.
Okay, well, I do want to thank you folks for coming out today, and I do hope that we have stimulated some interest in going out and voting in this upcoming election. There's still a lot to discuss about WBAI, but I'll reserve that until after the election. But it's a place that we need. It's a place that people need. We need a place to go to hear the voices of those folks who don't get an opportunity to tell their story. We've been trying to tell the story about police brutality for the longest, and now it's all over the news. It's not new. These things have been happening all along.